It was a typical Friday night. I was swiping through a dating app, like so many others do, when his profile caught my eye. His name was Evan, and he seemed different. His messages were charming, but not overbearing, and his picture showed a perfect smile, just the right blend of casual and sophisticated. I felt an instant connection, one that's hard to explain. Looking back, I realize now that gut feeling wasn't excitement. It was a warning I ignored. We exchanged a few texts, and within a couple of days we decided to meet. He suggested a small Italian restaurant just outside of town. I'd never been there before, but his confidence was reassuring. I thought maybe he knew the best spots, that he was the type of guy who could introduce me to new things. I was wrong. As I got ready that evening, I remember feeling a strange sense of dread. Something was off, but I couldn't place it. Still, I brushed it off as nerves, after all. It had been a while since my last date. I arrived at the restaurant a little early, and when I saw him, my heart skipped. He was more handsome in person, tall and composed. Everything seemed perfect. That's how it always starts, doesn't it? With perfection. We had dinner, and everything seemed normal. He was charming, attentive, and we even laughed. But midway through the meal, I noticed his eyes. They were empty, like his smile wasn't connected to anything real. It was like he was rehearsing emotions, like this was all just a performance. I should have left then, but I didn't. After dinner, he suggested we take a drive to see the view, and I agreed. The night was crisp and the sky was clear, so I thought nothing of it. We got into his car, and the further we drove, the darker the roads became. He took a turn down a dirt path, the kind that feels like it leads to nowhere. I asked him where we were going, but he just smiled, again, that hollow smile, and said, "You'll see." That was when the air in the car changed. I started to feel trapped. The once charming man beside me had turned into a stranger. I asked him to turn around, but he acted like he didn't hear me. That's when I noticed the knife on the floor, glinting in the dim light from the dashboard. My heart raced. Panic surged through me, but I knew if I let him see my fear, it would be over. I kept calm, forcing small talk, pretending I didn't see it. My mind was spinning, trying to come up with a way out. We stopped at the top of an isolated hill, miles away from anything. The view, there was none, just trees and silence. He turned off the car and just stared at me. That's when I felt it, a shift. His entire demeanor changed, like a mask had fallen off. "I've been waiting for this," he said, his voice low and controlled. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He reached down and grabbed the knife. My body went cold. I thought about running, but where would I go? We were in the middle of nowhere. But then something in me snapped. I realized if I didn't do something now, I was going to die. I made up an excuse to get out of the car, something about needing air, and to my surprise, he let me. But as soon as I was outside, I heard him get out too, the crunch of his footsteps behind me. I could feel him closing in. My heart was pounding, blood roaring in my ears. I took off running. The woods were dense, the ground uneven. Branches tore at my clothes, my skin. I could hear him behind me, moving fast. He wasn't shouting or swearing. He was silent. That was the worst part. It was like he was hunting me. I stumbled, fell, but I forced myself up. I didn't look back, not once. I ran and ran, my legs screaming for me to stop, but I didn't. I couldn't. I could feel him getting closer, the sound of his breathing now too close. Then I saw it. A cabin, old and abandoned, barely visible through the trees. I didn't think. I just ran towards it, praying it was unlocked. The door creaked open, and I slipped inside, holding my breath. I crouched in the dark, trying to control my sobs, trying not to make a sound. I could hear him outside, pacing, looking for me. His footsteps circled the cabin, slow, deliberate. And then I heard the door handle twist. I knew it was over, but the door didn't open. He must have thought it was locked because after a few more minutes, the footsteps faded. I waited there, in the dark, for hours, too terrified to move. When I finally gathered the courage to leave, the sun was starting to rise. I ran until I found the road, waving down the first car I saw. I didn't stop shaking until I was safe at the police station, telling them everything. But they never found him. No body, no car, no trace. I still get chills when I think about it, because every night I wonder if he's still out there, waiting, searching for me. And one day, I fear, he'll find me again.
First dates are supposed to be exciting, a little nerve-wracking even, but never terrifying, never life-changing. Emma had matched with Ryan on a dating app. Ryan was attractive, well-spoken, and his messages had a charming confidence that put Emma at ease. After a week of texting, Ryan invited her to a nice Italian restaurant. It seemed safe, public. Emma told herself there was nothing to worry about. She was wrong. When Emma arrived, Ryan was already there, sitting at a candlelit table near the window. He looked just like his pictures, tall, dark hair, sharp jawline. But in person, something was off. She couldn't place it at first, but she felt it in her gut. Ryan's smile was perfect, almost too perfect, like he had practiced it in a mirror. They ordered wine. The conversation flowed easily, but every now and then, Ryan would pause, just for a second too long, before responding. Like he was processing Emma's words in a way that didn't feel human. She laughed it off. Maybe Ryan was just nervous. And then she saw it. As Emma lifted her wine glass, she noticed something in the reflection. Behind Ryan, there was a figure, a dark, looming shadow, standing impossibly close to him. But when she looked up directly, there was nothing there. Just the empty restaurant behind Ryan. She swallowed hard. Maybe it was just a trick of the candlelight. But then it moved. The shadowy figure in the reflection tilted its head, slowly, unnaturally, like it knew Emma could see it. Her breath caught in her throat. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Still, when she glanced up, there was nothing. She forced a smile, trying to keep her composure. "Excuse me," she said, pushing back her chair. "I just need to use the restroom." As she walked away, she could feel Ryan's eyes on her. Watching. Waiting. Inside the restroom, Emma splashed cold water on her face. She was being ridiculous. A weird reflection was no reason to panic. But deep down, something inside her was screaming, "Leave." Now she pulled out her phone to text her friend, but her fingers froze when she saw the screen. Her camera was on, and in the reflection behind her, just over her shoulder, was the shadow. She turned around so fast she nearly slipped, but again, nothing. The stall doors were open. The room was empty. She rushed back to the table, ready to make an excuse and leave. But when she sat down, Ryan was staring at her. His smile was gone. "Did you see it?" Ryan asked, his voice eerily calm. Emma's blood ran cold. She forced out a laugh. "See what?" Ryan's eyes darkened. "The thing behind me." Emma's throat tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Ryan's fingers tapped the stem of his wine glass, his gaze locked onto hers. "It likes you." The restaurant suddenly felt too quiet. Emma glanced around. The waiter was gone. The couple sitting at the booth behind them had disappeared. She grabbed her coat and stood. "I should go." Ryan's hand shot out, gripping her wrist, not hard but firm. "Don't. It'll follow you now." Emma's vision blurred with panic. "Let go of me." Ryan leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Once you see it, it never stops watching." Emma yanked her arm free and bolted. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, heart hammering against her ribs. When she got in, she locked the doors and started the engine, her hands shaking. As she drove, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, wide-eyed, breathless. And behind her, in the back seat, was the shadow. Emma didn't remember getting home. Her memories blurred into streaks of streetlights and the sound of her own breath. But as soon as she stepped inside her apartment, she locked every door, every window. She checked the mirrors. Nothing. No shadow. She barely slept. Every sound made her jolt awake. The air felt wrong. The next morning, she convinced herself it was all in her head. A bad trick of the light. Stress, anxiety. But then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Did you make it home safe?" Her stomach dropped. She knew who it was. But she never gave Ryan her number. She deleted the message, blocked the number. Then, hesitantly, she opened her front camera. Just to check, just to be sure. At first, it was just her. Tired, pale, haunted. But then, a shadow moved behind her. The screen glitched. The face in the reflection wasn't hers anymore. It was smiling. Emma threw the phone down, her breathing ragged. This wasn't possible. Her hands trembled as she reached for a mirror, any mirror. The bathroom, the hallway, even the reflection in her TV screen. Each time, there it was, the shadow, closer now. She backed against the wall, whispering to herself, "It's not real. It's not real." Then a sound, a faint, distorted laugh, barely audible yet deafening in the silence of her apartment. She turned slowly, dreading what she would see. The TV screen flickered. Her reflection, no, its reflection, stared back at her, its smile stretching wider, unnaturally wide. Then it stepped forward, not in the reflection, into the room. First dates are supposed to be about getting to know someone, about excitement, anticipation, maybe a few butterflies. But when Jessica agreed to meet Jason for a weekend away, she had no idea it would be a date that would leave her running for her life. She had met Jason through a dating app, a handsome man with a charming smile, thoughtful messages, and an adventurous streak. After a few weeks of texting, he invited her to spend the weekend in a secluded cabin in the woods. It sounded perfect at first, a quiet, cozy getaway far from the hustle and bustle of city life. Just the two of them. What could go wrong? But as soon as Jessica pulled up to the cabin, something felt off. The trees loomed over the tiny house like dark sentinels, their branches scraping against the windows. The air was thick, heavy with an unsettling stillness. Jason had arrived before her, waiting outside with a smile that seemed a little too wide, a little too forced. Jason led Jessica inside, showing her the rustic interior, the crackling fireplace, and the large windows that opened up to the dark, empty woods. The cabin was charming, shabby chic, a little dusty, but warm. It should have felt comforting, but the isolation was suffocating. The silence felt like it was pressing in from all sides. They had dinner by the fire, their conversation light at first, just casual small talk. They laughed. Jessica felt her initial unease start to fade. But then, something shifted. She couldn't put her finger on it, but Jason's behavior started to change. He would glance at her more intently, as if studying her reactions. His jokes began to carry an odd, dark edge. She couldn't tell if he was trying to be mysterious or if something was off. The wine went straight to her head. She sipped from her glass, trying to ignore the flutter of nerves in her stomach when she caught Jason staring at her. It was the kind of look that wasn't quite friendly, too knowing, almost predatory. And then she noticed something. A flicker at the edge of her vision. A shadow moving, just behind Jason, reflected in the dark glass of the window. At first, it was so fleeting, she thought it was a trick of the light. But then it moved again, stretching across the floor. Her breath caught in her throat. Her heart began to race. Jason continued to speak, but his words faded out as she focused on the reflection. There it was again. No, two figures this time. One was small, hunched, the other tall and looming, impossibly still. Jessica blinked and quickly looked away, but when she glanced back at the window, there was nothing there. She could feel the tension in the air, like something was watching her, something that wasn't Jason. Her mind raced. Was it just her imagination? She excused herself, standing from the table with a nervous smile. "Excuse me, I'll just..." But before she could finish her sentence, Jason spoke, his voice softer now, colder. "Do you hear that?" She froze, her body going stiff. The whispering, she heard it now, faint but distinct, like voices calling to her from the woods outside. She hadn't heard anything when they first arrived, but now the forest seemed to be alive, full of murmurs and low guttural sounds. The trees weren't just swaying, they were breathing. Jason didn't move. He just stared at her, his expression unreadable. It was like he was waiting for her to acknowledge it. She smiled nervously, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Jason, what's happening?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood, his long shadow stretching over the floor as he moved toward the window. "It's starting," he said quietly, almost to himself. Jessica could feel her pulse in her throat, her skin crawling as the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. The room had grown colder, the air heavier, like a storm was coming. The fire crackled in the hearth, but the warmth didn't reach her. The room seemed to close in around her. Jason's gaze was fixed on the window, his face unreadable. And then, the voices came again, this time louder, more distinct. She could hear them clearly now, desperate, pleading. "Leave! Leave now!" Her heart hammered in her chest. She took a step back. "Jason, what did you bring me here for?" she asked, her voice a whisper of fear. Jason didn't turn around. His eyes were locked on something in the darkness outside. "I didn't bring you here for a date, Jessica. I brought you here for company." The room seemed to shudder. The walls groaned. Jessica's vision blurred. She backed away, every instinct screaming at her to get out. But Jason blocked the door. His smile twisted, but his eyes, they were empty. "You can't leave now," he said, his voice cold and detached. "You're part of it now. It's too late." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the floorboards creaked as if something was moving above them. Something heavy, something alive. Jason stepped closer. "It's watching us," he murmured. His voice now was barely more than a rasp. Jessica's breathing came in shallow gasps as the room grew darker. She could feel the air turn icy, the chill settling deep into her bones. The shadows on the walls seemed to crawl toward her, moving unnaturally, like they were alive. Then came the knock. It was faint at first, just a tap at the door. But then the knocking grew louder, more insistent. Knock, knock, knock. Jessica's heart leaped in her chest. She spun toward the door. "Who's there?" she called, her voice shaking. But Jason didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood, staring at the door. And then the whispers turned into screams. "No! No! Get away!" Jessica screamed as the room grew colder still. The air pressed in on her chest, suffocating her. The door flew open with a screech, and the wind howled through the room. But there was no one there, just the howling emptiness of the forest. But the shadows, they were closer now. A figure stepped into the room, tall, dark, cloaked in tattered robes. Its face was hidden, but Jessica could feel its presence, cold, suffocating. It didn't need to speak. The mere sight of it was enough to freeze her to the spot. Jason didn't flinch. He was no longer human. His eyes were voids, lifeless. He stepped toward her slowly, almost mechanically. "Stay," he whispered. Jessica's pulse pounded in her ears as she backed away, toward the door, toward freedom. But as she reached for the handle, The figure's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist with an iron grip. "No, no," she whispered, terror seizing her chest. Her heart was racing. The shadows closed in. She yanked her wrist free, bolting for the door, throwing it open with all her strength. But outside was darkness. No moon, no stars, just the suffocating blackness of the forest. She could hear the whispering again, louder, closer. "Leave! Leave now!" Her legs felt weak, but she pushed forward, running into the woods. The cold ground beneath her feet, the branches reaching for her, trying to pull her back. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The whispering followed her. Jason's footsteps were behind her now, his breathing close. But when she looked over her shoulder, nothing. Then, the ground beneath her feet gave way. She stood at the edge of a cliff, the abyss yawning before her. The trees were silent now, still. The wind died, everything was frozen, and Jason's voice, once so cold and detached, now sounded almost sad. "You can't escape, Jessica. You never could." Jessica screamed, but there was no one to hear her. As she looked down into the void, she realized there was nowhere to run. She was never meant to leave.